Thank you so much. And at the outset, apologies for having going ahead in the queue. So I'll quickly take you all through the various management aspects of iatrogenic ectasia. Before we go into the management itself, one thing we must know in iatrogenic ectasia is that early detection is extremely important. But what's even more important is to differentiate from regression or decentered ablation. So this was a patient who had a regression, mild early IS asymmetry. But here, if you can see, the anterior posterior floats are absolutely normal. And this is a very important point for us to detect, a very subtle superior decentration, which can make the inferior as a part of the cornea look steeper. And this IS asymmetry makes it look as if this is an early onset ectasia. So it's important for us to analyze it as a whole, look at the kind
recording in progress. So how it has helped? It improves clarity by forming a uniform layer over the eyepiece. We have not seen it.
Could you mute it so that we can hear our sessions talk? Yes.
So the other aspect is that even in certain devices like OBSCAN, this is a very old scan of a patient where you can see a fairly high ablation has been done. We were actually believing that there is an increase in the posterior shift of the corneal curvature after any laser ablative procedures. But then we learned that this is an artifact. So these are certain things that we need to watch out for before we diagnose a patient with iatrogenic ectasia. Early onset ectasia we can just observe with spectacles, contact lenses, but possibly cross-linking comes much earlier in the algorithm for management of iatrogenic ectasia than it would even in a patient with keratoconus. The reason possibly is that post-LASIK ectasia, unlike in keratoconus, is possibly done at diagnosis because the chances that a patient with iatrogenic ectasia would progress at a much later age is much higher. There is also a question of possibly slightly decreased efficacy of the cross-linking procedure in iatrogenic ectasia. As we all know, cross-linking tends to cross-link and the anterior 250 microns of the cornea, where the first 120, 130 microns goes away in the flap itself. Localized treatments for normalization is now becoming a key thing. And customized cross-linking would be exceedingly useful in a patient with an iatrogenic ectasia, as they are more likely to have a greater degree of IS asymmetry, a localized elevation, and a localized flattening and strengthening is something which would be a great idea in these patients. We have customized patterns which can also address astigmatism, and also with pupillary tracking ensure that they get adequate cross-linking, but at the same time adequate flattening as well. After, apart from cross-linking, we have to see whether it's a central or eccentric cone. The chances of having a slightly more eccentric cone is more likely in iatrogenic ectasia. But having said that, if you do have a patient with central cone and patient has sufficient thickness, mind you, post-LASIK ectasia may not have good thickness and are more likely to have reduced thickness. But then comes the question, is an ablating an already a cornea which has undergone ectasia after ablation a good idea? But we must remember that here, since we are ablating only 50 microns, the high likelihood that we are only ablating the flap. And it's unlikely we are disturbing the stroma in any way. This was just one such patient with the post-LASIK ectasia, but with good thickness in this patient, and subsequent to topographic guided treatment, the patient had good improvement in both uncorrected and best corrected visual acuity, as well as stabilization of the ectasia. Again, as discussed earlier, the epithelium itself can be a great masking agent in any form of ectasia, especially post-LASIK treatments where epithelial hyperplasia is very, very common. This is just one such patient where the epithelium has gone on evolving during the first 9 months after the procedure. So it's extremely important that we map the epithelium, get a true idea of how the stromal curvature is and how the stroma is, and then go ahead and perform the treatment. The next viable option, especially if it's an eccentric cone, is intracorneal ring segments. Intacs works extremely well in post-LASIK ectasia, possibly even better than in keratoconus. And it's reserved for patients who have a visual acuity of maybe less than 612, where you can't do a topography guided treatment. These are the factors which play an important role as far as planning is concerned. If you have a centered cone, you can use symmetric rings. Or if you have a decentered cone where 50% of the cone is outside the central 3 mm zone, you can use asymmetric rings. You also have a single ring segments, which are, especially if there is a high IS asymmetry, giving a single inferior ring is very, very useful. We also have the smaller arc ring segments, where especially in the early forms of ectasia, you have more astigmatism than the amount of myopia. So you don't want global flattening, but you want a flattening along the region where there is increase in the curvature along that particular meridian. And these 90-degree arc segments work extremely well. This was just an example of a patient with iatrogenic ectasia. As you can see here, fairly significant power, and post intacs, there is a marked improvement in symmetry and reduction in the power, and improvement in the UCVA and BCVA. Visual improvement after intacs, if there is a significant residual error and a significant irregularity, contact lenses may be necessary. However, we may have to go in for mini scleral lenses, as fitting the standard lenses can be more challenging. Post intracorneal ring segments for low residual error, we could, if there is sufficient thickness, consider a PRK or a topo-guided PRK also. However, they do have an increased propensity for haze, and we need to watch out for that. You could, if there is a significant residual error or a high degree of anisometropia, toric phakic intraocular lenses are also an excellent option. And 6 to 12 months after documenting stability from the primary cross-linking procedure, we could go ahead with a phakic intraocular lens, either if it's well-centered, good best spectacle corrected visual acuity, or post-intracorneal ring segments after a minimum 6-month interval, 2 consequent revisits where topography and refraction is stable. You can go ahead with the toric phakic lens, and these patients tend to do very, very well. Finally, DALK, of course, if the visual axis is not clear or very advanced, you could go ahead and do a DALK procedure. I'll not go into the details. Truth be told, fortunately, we haven't had a situation where we had to do a DALK for a patient with an iatrogenic ectasia. This is the patient with keratoconus. But having said that, if a need arises, we can do DALK even in these procedures and give excellent results. So we have a wide range of treatment options, and with judicious decision-making and combination therapy, we can give rise to optimal outcomes. Thank you so much for your kind attention.